everybody, you with your main man, Anthony Brogdon, soul brother #1, strong inspiration host, coming at you once again with this good Black history. Man, I find these intelligent people and I let them do the talking. I just come up with a couple questions. Let me tell you something, my friends. I got a smooth guy on the channel today. Oh, your mind gonna be blown what this brother gonna talk about. And let me tell you what happened. I interviewed one of his co-workers, and the co-worker out of the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, museum, chronicling all that, what happened in the Beham, the Iron City, everybody, where we heard a lot of it over the years. Birmingham was like one of them focal points. It was going on all over America, specifically in the southern region, but Birmingham was like, hey, I ain't going to Birmingham at one point.
Exactly.
I live in Detroit. I was like, no, man, I ain't got to go through there. I'm okay where I'm at. I'll take this racial strife. But then I lived in Atlanta. I'm just telling y'all something personally on me. I lived in Atlanta and I used to go to Birmingham often and got to love that town. I felt the vibe of them strong brothers and sisters in that town. I was like, man, this is on point. Hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations. It's free, don't cost no money, don't ask no information. It just let me know you like me. And I like you and ain't nothing you can do about it. I'm gonna keep giving you this good history and finding these nice people, experts to come on here and let them do the and share this. Hit the like button on this video. I'm telling you, my man gonna tell you something here and I just talked about it. He said, I can talk about such and such. I said, perfect. Gotta go no further. Boom shakalaka, there it is. Watch. Hit the notifications bell because we don't play the videos coming up 4 or 5 a week or so. And I don't have no specific time as to when I'm gonna put them out. I don't want to be locked in like that. I can do one at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I have. So you get a bing, a ding, or something to say, hey, Strong Inspirations back at you, new stuff, new content. And then tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. Don't keep it to yourself. Share the link. That's all you gotta do. Take the link, copy it, then share it on your media and all that stuff. Let people hear these stories. Because did you see the one that I got of the black guy who they had his grandfather at the tree with the rope around his neck? And my man did a distress call because he's a Mason. There was a white guy in the robe who was a Mason and said, okay, I'm gonna let him go. Watch that video. Did you see the one where I got on the lady? She talks about why, and we just alluded to it a little bit, why not all black people left the South? Some of them said, we ain't going nowhere. This our land, and we standing here and fighting. Watch that video. Did you see the one I did where the lady talked about there were slaves? Check this situation out. The husband or the wife is enslaved and their mate is free and they living in the same house? I didn't know that. I didn't understand that dynamic. Oh, it's true. There were slaves. Did you see the video I got about Harriet Tubman? Harriet Tubman didn't, for a number of years, did not live on a plantation. She lived with her family off the plantation site. She just had to check in every now and then because she was out using her skills to make money. Told the white man, he said, all right, I'll hook you up. You just send me the money. You ain't got, that's cool with me. I didn't know that. Watch that video. Oh, we're 270 strong on Strong Inspiration. How about one more? My man nodding, and I know he got to go, but check this out. Did you see the one I did with the guy out of South Africa? My man, he said he colored, look light skinned, right? That's how they, do it. And then check out this term. He said he lived through apartheid. He said, man, apartheid never was but Jim Crow.
Yep.
Watch that video. Oh, I'm telling you, I got you covered on Strong Inspirations. How about this, my friends? if you don't know, I'm a filmmaker. This is my documentary. This is DVD. You know, you got DVD cases. They obsolete now. So you can watch my film on Amazon. It's streaming. It's good. Slaves who went to college and black millionaires in the 1800s. The movie starts and ends with a guy who's 101 years old when we're interviewing him. And my man, in his last remarks on the tape, he said, man, y'all can't tell me nothing. I done seen it all. Watch my movie and then read my book, Black Business Book, over 200 facts. And it's an easy read. I ain't gonna lie to you, I don't add no commentary to the fact. I just let the fact stand on its own merit, my friends. I'm not diluting it with I think. All I did was I found them, rewrote them a little bit, you know, didn't change nothing, put something in the beginning, something in the back of the sentence for different, so it wasn't plagiarized. And then I give it to you. And if you don't believe the fact, I give you the link where I found it. And if you get one, you get an autograph. And every 10th book I sell, I donate one to a school. This is bigger than me. This thing is jamming. Did you know, and I know, hold on, my brother, one more minute. I got my own festival. I got a Black History Festival in Kansas City, Kansas. The slaves walked across the Missouri River at a narrow point right there where we're going to be at the festival. They walked across there because Missouri was a slave state. They got the freedom in Kansas. Now, the man could have came over there and started messing with him, but the guy who I interviewed, his descendant, said, man, forget all that. I ain't going back. We're going to fight this out to the death. So check me out. Go to my website, businessintheblack.net. That's where everything is. Check me out on this note. You know I like using the word strong a lot. It's my favorite word. I wish I lived on Strong Street, but I don't, and that's not the point. The point is strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that is my introduction to my guest today. He's a strong man coming out of that B-ham. Watch out. Come on, brother. Introduce yourself, man. Thanks for coming on the channel.
Well, thanks for having me. My name is Charles Woods III. I am the education director and trainer at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. I'm also a business owner. I'm an owner of LLC, is an education consulting company, as well as Marching On Tour Company. It's a local tour company where I get to tell people the history of Birmingham and the surrounding areas.
Yeah, man, get that plug in, man. Shoot, that's what we do here. We plugging people, man. And at the end, we want to know the website and everything. And so, but a couple questions on you, my brother. Are you originally from Birmingham?
No, originally from Southern California, San Bernardino area, Inland Empire.
Oh, really?
Went to college in New Orleans, and that's where I met my wife. She's from Birmingham, and we moved up to Birmingham shortly after graduating from college.
Oh, okay. How about this then? You got me on the road here. How did your family get to California? Do you know that?
Oh, yeah, I know both sides of my history, how they got there. My mother's originally from Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Okay.
And she left college in Arkansas at Central Arkansas University to go to California to visit her sister, who was living out there, and just stayed. And there she met my father, his family's from St. Louis, Missouri, as well as Sioux City, Iowa. And my grandfather was in the military brat, you know, kind of been all the way around, and retired from the military in California, Pomona, California, specifically.
Yeah, I love it. Now, where's the slave plantation at in your family? Do you know that?
Well, look, so I'm doing a little history and research now, and so in my dad's mother's side, they're from the Sioux City, Iowa area, and so I'm trying to get some more history on that. I know we have connections to the Younger family, who was the gang of the James gang from Jesse James and the James gang, right? And so I'm doing a little history, trying to find out what's going on with my family and their plantations. So right now, I just found out on my mother's side, they have some history here in Alabama, in Limestone County, Alabama. And so a little bit of plantation stuff there. Also some Native American history that I'm learning. as well. And
So you would say you have some Indian roots in your family?
so the rumor is, we always have these rumors, and so I'm trying to do some research to substantiate those rumors or not. But I have Cherokee on both sides of my family, my mother and my dad's side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know there was a lot of intermingling. You get us together after a while, that we're gonna start looking at you with a forked eye and say, "Come on over."
And that's why this conversation we're gonna have today is so real and pertinent, because we also have the Olmecs. You ever heard of the Olmecs?
No.
So the Olmecs are the indigenous Africanoid or
okay,
Negroid
but before you get there, don't forget that thought. I'm gonna stay on you just a tad bit longer, though, my man. Hold on, yes, just sir. Look. Did you know Black history out in California?
Oh yeah. Yeah, my mother did something very strategic with me. We would go every year to the African marketplace down in LA, where I would buy, Black books and get the opportunity to see Black bookstores and Black businesses that are selling African type products and things. And then we also went to the Black Family Reunion, which is another festival. Yeah. And so my mom was very strategic in instilling Black history in me at a very young age.
You didn't get it where you grew up.
Not in school, but I was that guy that challenged the teacher in class and said, when the teacher started talking about history or Sumeria or something, that would be me, the person talking about ancient Egypt, ancient Kush, ancient Ethiopia, and some of the other ancient contributions that we had.
Did you grow up in a Black neighborhood?
Grew up in a mixed neighborhood.
Okay.
My neighborhood was majority Black. I grew up on the west side of San Bernardino, right on the border of San Bernardino and Rialto, California. Mostly Black neighborhood, had a lot of Cambodians and other Asians, but mostly Hispanic and Black.
Did you have a white friend?
Oh, I have white friends, but
really, I ain't never had a white friend, man. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Majority of my friends were
80% Black.
Yeah, majority of my friends were Black, Hispanic, and Asian.
Oh, really?
Growing up, yeah.
Is there a Black history story out of San Bernardino? Something that happened? Does the Panthers come that way or any of that kind of thing?
It's not a lot of Black history in San Bernardino. They do have, San Bernardino is one of those older, mission towns in the California area, and has a really strong history with the mission history with Catholic priests coming and kind of colonizing that area. And so there's a Native American tribe known as Kali that they said they look like Negroes, and so you can get into some of that history that starts talking about some of the indigenous populations in the area. But LA was founded by like 21 families, and over majority of those families were African American. And so we have a rich history of Black people getting to California and out west looking for gold, just like everybody else.
Right.
So-called cowboys, and also the Buffalo Soldiers, as those were the individuals that helped win the West. And they also came out to these areas and settled early on.
Now, yeah, you're right, because a couple of things you just alluded to, the Cowboys are Black guys.
Oh yeah, Cowboys are Black. Even the term,
people might not know that story.
Yeah, they don't know that. The term cowboy is in reference to African enslaved individuals who handled the cows.
Right.
And they were called a cowboy because they always called us a boy instead of a man. So that person could have been 70 years old. And he was still called a cowboy because that was his job, dealing with the cows and the horses and the other things. Right. And then so these Europeans pick up on this term, this phrase that was originally meant for us.
Yeah, they did, because I'm telling you, in all them movies, I didn't see number white guys as the cowboys.
Yeah, people like Bass Reeves and Nat Love. These are the original cowboys of the West. Bass Reeves being a deputized bounty hunter, where the whole idea of the Lone Ranger is built upon his persona, and so Nat Love also being one of the first entertaining cowboys, where they have the competitions now, like rodeo competitions.
Right.
Yeah, that was founded with a guy by the name of Nat Love, who's considered, the father of cowboys when it came to entertainment and things of that nature as well. Expert marksman, shooter, you know, one of those people that can round up the cow real fast. And
Yep.
all that. Yeah, that's us.
So your background led you to study Black history and so on and so forth.
It did. I changed my major, got to college as a biology pre-med major. Changed that major first semester of my freshman year, looking at my grades and not being afraid to follow that history degree. And so that's what I ultimately got, a history pre-law degree, a minor in political science, concentration in African American studies.
When you decided upon that, what did you think you would do with it? You know, I'm just wondering, when a person says I'm gonna do Black history as a discipline, what are they doing with it for the most part?
So one of my original dreams, I guess you could say, or goals, was to start my own school and teach history the way it's supposed to be taught, you know. And so now, even in my position now, I'm getting the opportunity to teach history that's not normally taught in schools, give people the correct narrative along these historical timelines. And then also give me the opportunity to do stuff like this, where, you know, kind of step out of the civil rights box a little bit and just kind of talk about history as a whole. And, you know, and with all this stuff with people attacking critical race theory and these other things right now, it's really important to tell the real history and not the watered down, censored type of history that they a lot of states want.
I love it, and which is leading into the particular topic of history before slavery in Africa, of what you want to talk about.
Yes, sir.
Hold on. Was there a ha-ha moment for you in this discovery?
Yes. So for me personally, a lot of the things that I went through research wise was through religion and trying to understand you know, what enslaved Africans on this side of the world were stripped of once they got here. What was that they were stripped of? We know they were stripped of their history, their culture, and their religion, their language, you know, all of those things. And so that was the first thing that kind of sparked me in my own personal journey was, well, what were these things that these Black people were doing before they got on this side of the world through enslavement? And then that kind of put me on a journey to just let me know that the aha moments were that we predate you know, just about everything. Everything started with us. We were first to civilize this planet. We were the first ones because of where we were in the world, in Africa. We were able to lay down on the ground and look up at the stars and map all the constellations and map, you know, what ended up becoming a calendar, you know, and the sciences, astronomy, astrology, and mathematics. These things were created through Africans, from Africans, because we lived in an environment that was conducive to learning. We didn't live in an environment like in Europe or some other places in the world where you're literally fighting for every sense of existence for your life, right? If you're not fighting against individuals for your meat, for your food, you got to fight to create fire so that you can cook. You had to fight the elements and the seasons because they were harsh winters and we didn't have that. We lived in an area that was pristine to life, and it was pristine to us having everything that we needed there provided for us, and that allowed us the time to be able to lay down on our backs and look up at the stars and say, "Wow, look at that! Wow, that moves across the sky in a certain way. Wow!" And we were able to do that for thousands and thousands of years, right? Thousands of years, and we gave that knowledge and that information to the rest of the world. People came from all over the world to Egypt and to the other places in Africa to learn from us, because we were the oldest people on the planet. So we were there long enough to be able to do all of those things and have all of that knowledge.
Right.
And so that's part of the history that really gave me my aha moment when I was young, man. I'll never forget it. This was for my 8th grade year going into my 9th grade year that summer. Right. There was one black bookstore in my city. And my mom dropped me off there. She had to go run an errand. She just kind of left me. And I was just there. And I had about $15 in my pocket. And I said, I'm going to look in here. I'm going to find me the right book. And I found the book. It was by an author by the name of Cheikh Anta Diop. He wrote a book called The African Origins of Civilization.
Okay.
It's still one of the top authority books in this type of information that we're talking about. And it was this thick, man, and it intimidated me. I'm going into the 9th grade. I said, I can't read that thick book, but I said, but I'm gonna keep it. And I kept that book. I bought another book. The other book was What They Never Taught You in History Class, by Indus Kamet Kush. Even his name had me, intrigued. Indus Kamet Kush. And that book was nothing, that book was thick too, but it was such an easy read. Sound like your book. But that book was such an easy read because it was nothing but sites and quotes from other books about different information. So it was like the first Christians were black, and then he'll have a list of sites from all these other books that show you the foundations and the historical origins of Christianity, Islam, Judaism. Then he went into like the first astronomers, first astrologers, and then what I noticed though was that in the What They Never Taught You in History Class book, it cited so many sources from that other book that I bought, The African Origins of Civilization. And when I was able to make that connections, I said, oh, wow, I can look at the sites from this book and find other books to read to get more information. And then that just was a, long story short, that was just a rabbit hole.
Let's go on a couple of them. Okay, so Africans have their own religion, and some of it was Christianity, some of it movement. When they got to America, they stripped them of that and said, you have to come up under being Catholic or another form of
yeah. So the Africans that were and our people were all learned in something. But they also understood that Christianity is even also a spin-off of African traditional religion. And so those that recognized that were able to easily not lose all of themselves, but come up under the umbrella of something else. So those are things like what they call voodoo or voodoo or Santeria. Those were West African religions, right? Ifa, Yoruba, disguised in Catholicism, because Catholicism allows you to have these different saints, right? And these different popes and other individuals that you could kind of look up to. And so a lot of Africans were able to hide their true religion in what the European wanted you to come up under. But see, in places like America, right, where we're not majority Catholic but Protestant, it was a lot more difficult for Africans to retain some of that African religion. Also, American slavery was some of the most brutal slavery throughout the colonies, but we're not going to talk about that. We're here to talk about pre-slavery.
But that goes into the deprogramming that they did. Let's say from a religious standpoint, can you give me an example of a deprogramming act that they might, or not just religious or anything that they did to inflict upon us so that we would lose our own identity that we talk about so often?
Well, the three major things that recognize you as a people, right?
Okay.
Are your religion, your culture, and your language. Okay. And so language was one of the first things that they made sure that Africans were not, even the Africans that may have been enemies, but they still understood each other's language. You were not allowed to speak in the African language. People would get their tongues cut out. They would get beaten profusely, right, if they were heard speaking in their indigenous or their native language. The other thing they did was just to instill fear. You're dealing with individuals who are warriors, who were fighters, and you had that, that big, strong leader, African leader, even in the, in the colonies or whatever, in the slaves, that other slaves would look up to, and they would make sure that they would break that individual, so a lot of times those big, strong men were either be castrated in front of everyone, beaten. Sometimes they would be raped by the master in front of everyone. Anything to break that being so that the other ones wouldn't try to run away, right? Or wouldn't try to fight back. And those were just physical things that were done to brutalize individuals. These Africans came to this continent knowing how to read, knowing how to write, knowing how to speak multiple languages a lot of times. A lot of them were Muslims when they came over here and were devout. All of that was stripped from them. You could not, if you were Muslim, you could not pray your 5 times a day anymore. You could not prostrate to the east. There was particular things that were taken from them. You couldn't speak in your Arabic to do your prayers.
Right.
These are things that are trying to break you as an individual, as a person, as a group. And these things were put on display. It was brutal things.
One of the other things, and I'm just getting this from Roots, is that they did what they could to change the name too. I mean,
oh yeah,
understandably, my man said, my name is Kunta Kinte. He said, no, it's not no more.
Right. And that's very, very strong way to break someone in their culture and their identity of who they are. Even your tribal names, you couldn't use, or they got appropriated, where you had tribes like the Mandinka tribe from West Africa, from Mali, but you want to call them Mandingos, right? So even when they could give an opportunity to retain some of that information, they just want to twist it and give that misinformation, that tricknology, to make you forget who and what you are. And so now, somebody may be able to try to trace that lineage back, but they keep hearing Mandingo and understand why they can't find that, because the Mandingo tribe doesn't exist. That's something that they told us your name was. It's the Mandinka, or other tribes that you lost those names on this side because you weren't allowed to utilize
them. There are a couple of cultures that have African heritage and homestead, let's say, here in America, are the Creoles and the Gullah Geechee.
Oh yeah.
Both of them. Now they didn't particularly lose their identity in the process.
Well, one thing I learned just on this whole journey, and you're one of my elders, and so you remember this phrase that they used to call Ebonics, right? You remember Ebonics?
Yeah.
Those were ways that this European society tried to skew what Black people were doing in this country, and saying that it was broken English. And a lot of times it wasn't broken English. A lot of times these were African words and phrases that were being retained in our DNA that are trying to come out. Right. And the Gullah and the Geechee were able to retain more of that than a lot of us other, Africans here in America. And so they were able to, through proximity, through isolation, through some other things, retain some more of that Africanism than a lot of other places. And so even when you hear stuff like a tote bag, what's a tote bag? A tote, T-O-T-E, that's an African word. Yeah. That word means to carry, right? So these are words and phrases that we're able to, make it through all of this trauma that we've had on this side of the world, but also things that people were able to retain. And so a lot of times when we say stuff like, somebody get the front door, right? We're supposed to say door, but we may say get the front door, could we take that R off? Because in these African languages, you don't have a lot of consonants at the end of your words. You have more vowels.
Okay.
Right. And so those sounds and those things are in us. They're in our DNA.
Yeah.
A lot of times they don't have the opportunity to come out in a positive way. And so it got phrased as Ebonics or broken English or patois or these other things that you hear in these other countries like Jamaica or somewheres in the Caribbean, even in places like Haiti and right. And even like Louisiana, some of these places where you have these Creole right. Individuals that are mixing their European dominant, language with some of these Africanisms to get these different sounds and these different words. We're just not as fortunate here in the States as some of these other places to be able to retain that. But the Gullah Geechee, they're in the States and they were able to do it.
Now let's go to this one then. What do you know of that the enslavers did to change the hairstyles? Because I'm sure when they were coming out of Africa, they probably did have dreads or some. I'm sure that each of them had maybe their own style. What did they do? Did they always try to make them have their hair cut short or something to break that that rhythm down?
Well, hairstyles, you can see my locks, whatever, hairstyles and things like that were part of our culture. They're part of our African culture. One of the things that was banned was cornrows or braiding. I love our people because we're so smart and we're so resilient. They used to braid paths to get out of enslavement, right? Paths to freedom in people's hair, in the patterns and the designs of their hair.
Really?
Yes, braiding was very, very cultural. Different tribes had different braids. And that was something that they used that you could not do, especially in the United States. You could not braid, you could not cornrow a lot of times. Or if you did, it's gonna be straight back. That's what you always used to see around.
Because they think they might have picked up on that.
Right. And I think they may have, and it was just a cultural, sign, and there was no culture. You weren't allowed to be cultural as an enslaved African.
I interviewed a lady on the channel who's Gullah Geechee. She said they used to put rice and other stuff like that in the hair to help them have something to eat along the voyage.
And they was running away.
Yeah, that's an ingenious move.
It's totally ingenious. I mean, and that's just what we, what we do. I had this is a off the wall example, but we used to always hear that term ghetto, or that's ghetto. That's ghetto. And we always interpreted that as being the most negative thing, especially for around black people that could be done. You didn't want to be a ghetto black person, but that ghetto is that ghetto-ness, that word ghetto came from the slums that the Nazis put the Jews in, right? But one thing that they didn't pay attention to, even to in these black ghettos, was the ingenuity that came out of it, the idea of being able to make so much with so little.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how I interpret the word ghetto now. Ghetto is innovation. Yeah. Ghetto is making things work with very little. And my dad, he I don't want to say he was the most ghetto person I knew, but he was very innovative in making things work with not having a whole lot.
Yeah.
And that's just another way for us to look at, at those things, that these aren't things that are bad situations that people put us in or that we're in, but these are situations that continue to test our resilience as African, indigenous, Aboriginal individuals from this planet, to continue to test our innovativeness and how we get out of situations. And we just continue to show that over and over.
Let me go on this one, because you jamming, my man. Let me go on this one. How about this? Were all Africans dark-skinned people, and there are only light-skinned Africans or light-skinned people in America, around the world, because we got white in us somewhere along the line? Is that a blanket statement we can make?
That's the worst statement that we can make, and people make this statement all the time. We black people, African people, however you want to call it, we know Africa is a term that was used and means to separate or divide, and so we use these words because a lot of people don't know the other words. But one of the original words was Al-Kebulan. Al-Kebulan, or Ethiopia, was one of the original words. Tamari or Tamari, which means beloved land. These are some of the original words for that continent. But on that continent, you have the oldest people on the planet. It's a tribe called the San tribe, S-A-N, or also known as they're two different tribes, but they look exactly the same. Also known as the Khoi or the Khoi San. And that tribe has every genetic phenotype within their being. They're light-skinned blacks with very kinky, woolly hair, really tight, coiled, nappy hair. They have the folded over eye like the Chinese, like Asian people have. They have the cleft chin, they have dimples. They have everything that you can see as a genetic either call them abnormalities, but a lot of times they're the dominant genes that come out, and sometimes they're recessive. but they have every phenotype within them. This one tribe from the southern part of Africa, right? And so in Africa, we have every skin tone, every makeup, from the darkest purple, blue, black people that they talk about. They just call them the blue people. All the way down to the lightest light skin that you can think of. And no, it's not because of intermingling or intermixing and all of that. No, we have every phenotype, every shade, every hair texture, everything all came from us. And so we have all of those in us, and they can pop up anywhere within anybody's gene pool.
Yeah, let me ask you this: when we talk about enslavement of blacks from Africa, would we say that they mostly got the people off of the coast near Ghana that was closest to America, maybe down? I mean, because I don't know if they would have got people out of Nigeria or some of them other, or did they, prefer the whole continent to say?
So that's another thing that's gets kind of overlooked, is that there were two slave trades. The first slave trade, or the first enslavement, was with the Arabs. That was prior to the transatlantic slave trade, and that focused mainly on Eastern Africa and Northern Africa. This is why places like Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, why these places have a what looks like an Arab-dominated demographic, but it wasn't always like that. That Arab-dominated demographic came in with one of the first slave trades or enslavements of African people, and it focused on East Africa and North Africa. And so those people were taken from East Africa and dispersed in other parts of Africa, other parts of the what they consider the Middle East, which I don't like to use that phrase, because where's the Middle North and the Middle South and the Middle West, right? But so these Africans were dispersed in those areas during that slave trade. And then during the transatlantic slave trade, majority of the people were taken from North and Western Africa, but kind of under the hook, the little hook that's in the side of Africa.
Yeah.
It was really that area where majority of those places were taken, with a lot of them being taken from places like Angola, with tribes like the Dahomey, people taken from Cameroon, Angola, Nigeria and Ghana and places like that, but mostly places like Senegal and Gambia and Angola and places like that on the western coast of Africa, were majority of the people that were taken into the New World. And if you pay attention, like really good, and did a little research, you could tell what tribes went to what areas. And so like places like Brazil, right? Brazil is like the third highest population of Black people outside of Africa, in one place. Right. And if you paid attention to them, because they were colonized by the Portuguese, right? And the Portuguese were the first to start doing imperialism and colonization, and started the slave trade. And a lot of the people that they took were from western, southern kind of Africa, places like Angola and and if you pay attention to some of the things that were able to survive from those African people in those places, you can start pinpointing those things. So like capoeira, right? You heard of capoeira?
Yeah.
Capoeira, the dance but it's a martial art, but it's also a dance. Those things can be traced back to Africa in particular areas as well, because the Portuguese, the Spanish, a little bit. The Spanish were a little brutal too, but the Portuguese, the French. The Portuguese and the French were a little more lenient with their slaves when it came to cultural things.
Oh, really?
Right. And so if you pay attention to certain areas, you can see more Africanisms in these areas, because they weren't as brutal about them not exercising their culture or their language or things like that. And so like even like Haiti, even though Haiti was freed very early on, or even like in Louisiana, slaves or the enslaved were able to, do some things. They were able to like go to Congo Square in New Orleans and trade with Native Americans, right? That's where some of those interminglings and stuff were happening early on.
Right.
They were able to go from plantation to plantation and not need a note or not do certain things Whereas on American plantations, you know, this the whole idea of the of stop and frisk, you know, or the slave patrols, you know, those are the precursors to what we know as law enforcement and policing now, you know. But in these other countries, you know, things are a little different.
Yeah.
So they have a little different outlook and outcome.
When we talk about as it kind of almost coming to an end on this note, it's not going to end on a note, but on this, there were, and I got a guy on the channel, his great grandfather was on that Catilda slave
Oh
ship.
yeah.
And he talks about there was another tribe that captured his great grandfather's tribe, and that's how they got sold into slavery. Is there any spot, and I got two questions, is there any spot on Africa that maybe was untouched by slavery?
So that's a very good question. And there were, so two things. There are rumored to have been tribes that were not able to be enslaved. Okay, either they would kill themselves or they'll try and go out, you know, fighting. Some of them would jump overboard on the ships. And so some tribes were considered not able to be enslaved. So even though they were captured, they never made it, or a lot of them never made it to the other side.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And then there were also remote places on the interior of Africa who were able to elude enslavement just by sheer proximity of where they were located.
Right. Okay.
Case in point, in the Congo, you have the Twi tribe, who are known as pygmies, right? They've been here for millennium, right? On this planet for millennium. Pygmies, and that's not the correct term, so I apologize. But the Twi tribe are also the other oldest people on this planet. So you got the Khoi and the San tribes, who are average height. Then you have the Twi or the Twa, who were 4 foot, usually fully grown 4 foot, you know, usually not higher than that.
Okay.
But you didn't notice, you didn't see any of those Twi people in any of the records of enslaved individuals. A lot of times in documents and things that they did keep track of this property that they were creating, you know, a whole economy around. But you didn't see a lot of those people. You didn't see a lot of Tutsis, but Tutsis were always usually over 6 feet, or Hutus, which were in the Rwanda area. You know, some of these people were able to elude enslavement, but ultimately were probably victims of colonization.
Colonization which to
over
me, there in the country, yeah.
Right, which is a lot of times worse, you know, or just as bad as slavery, if not worse, because now they're doing it to you on your own land.
There was an instance, and I go back to that, what I told you, that interview I had with the guy whose father was on that ship, that there was an African prince, king, that sold slaves into slavery and made a public apology. I mean, you know, it's 200 years later or what have you.
Right. I mean, that was,
you know of this story?
Well, I don't know about the public apology itself, but I do know of chiefdoms, you know, kings, chiefdoms, chiefs, who have made apologies for their participation in the transatlantic slave trade. And you got to understand, so this is something that Europeans and people always use and try and say that, well, you know, the Africans who had slavery and they sold other Africans into slavery. And yes, this is true. But their concept of the ideal of what slavery was not even fathomable for these Africans with what these Europeans ultimately did with these people. So yeah, they had prisoners of war. They went and they would have wars with other tribes, and they would take prisoners of war, and then they would use those prisoners of war to sell, to get guns and to get other stuff, you know, to use on other tribes. But and that did happen. It did happen. It happened a lot. But one thing that also happened is that once these Europeans kept coming back looking for more cargo, looking for more people, and you running out of enemies, right, to go and capture, to go and sell into enslavement, who do you think those Europeans came for the next time when you didn't have any?
Yeah, okay, there you go.
They coming for them.
Right.
And so even the ones that sold people into slavery also eventually got enslaved, because if you could not feel that appetite, then they're gonna come for you next.
Yeah,
And
that's
that
true.
happened as well. And then also what I have to say is that it was a European concept and thing that made slavery or enslavement for your whole life and generational. That concept was not even in the African's mind. So even when I sold my enemies off to slavery for somebody else, I'm still thinking in my mind, oh, they'll be enslaved for 7 years, right? After those 7 years, they can come out of enslavement and become a part of the society, marry into the society, even have children in that society and become a part of that tribe. That was their understanding of what enslavement or slavery was. Slavery was always a temporary thing, either for a debt or because you were a prisoner of war.
Got you.
And so even when they're selling these other Black people into slavery, that's their idea of what's going to happen to them. They didn't have the concept that this was going to be a lifelong thing for them, and then also generational for your children and their children's children and their children's children's children. That concept didn't exist.
When did you? Oh man, you on point. How about this one? When do you think that the Africans, how soon after or something like that, that they realized that what they were doing? Because see, they didn't know where the people were going initially. They just knew that we selling them off, like you said. Maybe they thought it was for 7 years, but then they knew they never saw them again. So they had to some part in their mind think something is wrong with this picture, and we got to stop doing our people like that. Is there that type of scenario where then now there's the pushback, what have you, because we know that they ain't going to happy land?
Well, my understanding of that concept for a lot of individuals was when they were ultimately enslaved as well. And so that was my initial premise, was that, after you're not able to supply these people for these Europeans, they came and got them. And then they realized, oh my God, this is what's happening to them after they were ultimately enslaved. Others had, some people were able to make it back and tell the stories.
Oh, is that right?
Oh yeah, there's a book by, I can never pronounce his name. It's Okwano or Ikuno. It's a narrative that he gave. He was a educated West African prince who was captured and sold into slavery. And he came on this side, and he was a Muslim, and he spoke Arabic in his own language, and he was an educated individual. And somebody on this side of the world ultimately saw and understood and came to understand who he was. And he was able to go back home, go back to Africa. So he was able to talk about the Middle Passage, his experience being sold over here and working as an enslaved individual and all of that happened. And then he was also able to go back home to Africa, where he was from, and live out his days. And so he was also able to put that in his story. But he has a narrative that he wrote. A lot of people read it. I think I read it in college, or part of it in college. I don't think I read the whole thing, but and he gives a very good account of his experience being enslaved and actually being able to live through it and then go back. And so people were able to kind of come back and tell the story of what ultimately
I got one
ended up happening.
I got this might be a good question, because I've interviewed a lady that said America could not be what it is without slavery. What's your take on what made them, the enslavers, come up with this idea and then go to the depths that they did? And what and this is deep on you too, mama. It's gonna be deep on you. What made us, for lack of a better word, accept that plight? What made us not fight back? Some of us did, that you talked about. What made us allow this to happen?
So to answer the last part of your question, because I can answer that easier than the first part. Us being the indigenous people of this planet and having recorded history longer than any other people, we understood cycles and how things work. And we understood that we would not always be on top. We would not always be in control of every aspect of this planet and this world. And that at some point, the first shall be last and the last shall be first kind of situation.
Okay.
And so we understood, once foreigners started to come into our lands, what our ultimate plight would possibly be. And we wrote it down to
Oh,
warn,
really?
oh yeah, to warn our future generations. Yeah, people knew, people understood what was going to happen. So that's the first thing. And so for some individuals to accept the plight that they were given was an understanding of um how cycles work and how worlds work and how things turn and how at some point you may be not at the top of your game and maybe
Okay.
under somebody else's foot, right? And so some people understood that, they recognized that, and they took that plight. Others also understood that that there's honor in everything that you do, right? There is especially being African people who have a veneration for their ancestors. They understood that for me to be, or for my generations behind me to survive, I have to survive. And I have to be who I am in this, and endure this pain and trauma so that my people can live on. Okay. We also understood that. Now to go back to your first part of the question,
Woo.
these
Okay.
people, they needed us. Okay. They needed us. They did not understand how to survive in this foreign environment without us. So the first they tried the Native Americans, right? Native Americans would run away and never come back. You'll never see them. They didn't know where they was going, what they was doing, or anything, right? But the Native Americans first tried to save them, right? What we understand as Thanksgiving, this great intermingling of these cultures to help survive. No, these white folks were about to die and they needed help. And these Native Americans came in and helped them, said, hey, y'all need to grow these crops. Y'all need to harvest these things. Y'all need to kill these animals and eat these animals. That other stuff you
Okay.
ate is killing you, right? So when they understood that this country is not founded on religious freedom, right? That's the Thanksgiving story. The other story is Jamestown and these companies that came out of Europe that were looking for money and gold and crops and things that they could make money off of, like in the Far East, right? The whole reason why Christopher Columbus wanted to come, his little route to the East, was so that they can get silk and spices and all those things from India and places. So these companies sprang up so that they could try and find spices and expensive stuff in America. And when they got here, they didn't understand what they was looking at, okay? And so things like tobacco and cotton, and first cash crop was indigo. Indigo is the dye that makes your jeans blue.
Right.
Africans been harvesting indigo for thousands of years.
Wow.
But Europeans didn't know what is this? And so now you got indigo and cotton, something to make clothes and then something to dye it with. They didn't understand what they were looking at. And so they needed individuals that have been agriculturalists for over a millennium.
I love it.
Right, to help make this stuff work. And so the Africans being resilient individuals who were non-susceptible to disease. We had strong immune systems. We're people of the sun. Vitamin D is off the charts. What are they talking about COVID now? What you need? Vitamin D. Right?
I love it.
So we were already not susceptible to disease. They think we didn't know this land, so we couldn't just run away. Right, which a lot of us did. We ran away and intermingled with the natives, right?
Yeah,
Native
that's
Americans.
right.
Seminole tribe is a
That's
maroon
right.
tribe, right? But it were different factors that kind of held us and kept us bound to the land,
That's right.
because we're agriculturalists, and so they needed us to be able to harvest these cash crops, right?
Yeah, I love it,
And so
man.
and so it's all about knowledge and information, and they're still getting us with that knowledge and information. Right. And so that's why I talk about Black History Revisited. Yeah, we were enslaved at some point. They don't even tell that story correctly. They always talk about 1619. What about 1528? 1528 was the first time Africans, they say, besides the Olmecs that we were talking about before, but it was 1528 that the Spanish first brought Africans to
That's right.
Florida. But what happened with that colony, or that attempted colony? The Africans took over, killed off the Europeans, and intermingled with the natives. that's not a colonization story that you want to set,
That's
start talking
right.
about founding a nation,
That's
because
right.
those folks refused to be enslaved, right? And it was about 15 of them,
Yeah.
right? But they always want to talk about Jamestown
Yeah.
that came later, because that was with the British, but
That's
that was
right.
their first successful attempt at making money on this side of the world. And so they want to talk that up. They want to talk about Pocahontas and these other things, because they don't want to talk about what happened to the Spanish down there in Florida, because we don't want to give nobody any ideas,
Yeah.
any
Right.
thoughts, right? Any empowerment to continue to
Right.
resist when you have a successful resistance. That's not a good narrative. They're not going to tell you that story.
That's right. I love it, man. Hey, everybody, I told you. Oh my God, boy. Did I tell y'all, my peoples? I got no more questions. We're gonna have him back on again. Watch me. I'm begging this brother to come back on anytime with all my guests. I ain't saying there's no one higher than the other, but at this very moment, boom. Hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations. You see what I'm doing. Hit the like button on this video. You see what he and heard what he said. I just tried to come up with some questions. Hit the notifications bell when the videos come up. You get that ding, electric shock, or something to say, hey, Strong Inspirations is coming at you again. And I'm going to blow you away, because here come everybody. Check it out. Here comes Black History Month in America. We're a day off from when we're doing
and check me out, marchingontourcompany.com.
Yep.
I have virtual tours that we can do, so you don't have to be in the city of Birmingham, and I can still get you this information about this wonderful city and how it changed the tide of the civil rights movement. But there's a lot of history here in Birmingham that's good to know. A lot of history.
We're gonna talk about that next time.
Yeah.
Because I like the backdrop.
Check me out
behind you.
Yes,
so everybody, that's what we're gonna do. So watch out. He coming back again. Thank you, my brother. And I say this with all sincerity, and I mean this, my friend, that I want you to stay strong, stay safe.
Yes, sir.
Stay on your grind. Keep doing it, man. Keep learning. Keep researching.
Yes, sir.
And telling these people in however form you want to do it, get the book out, whatever. We're going to, oh man, I'm excited. With that, I'll say bye-bye, we out. How about that? Peace.
Thank you.
Much love.
Peace. Hotel.